Hello everyone, it's good to be with you again. On Sunday I shared the first of two sermons on the subject of God is love. And God is love is certainly biblical. John says in his first letter, whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. God is love. The world's definition of love, which can be helpful, is mostly about feelings. But if we want greater depth, we need to go to what the Bible says about love. And one of the things that is there throughout the Gospels is of love is sacrificial. John, again in his Gospel, says, greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. And Paul says a very similar thing in his letter to the church in Rome. But God demonstrates his love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Love is about sacrifice, supremely the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. And I made a number of points about that. Firstly, it wasn't out of the blue, it was the culmination, the climax of a life of self-giving sacrifice. And then it wasn't just any old sacrificial death, it was the most horrendous death that you could possibly imagine. Why such a horrendous death? It was because Jesus identified himself with a slave. It was a slave's death. But not only a slave's death, it was also a death that was full of degradation. Degradation means treating someone poorly, which is an understatement, without respect. It's about rejection, it's about shame. And Jesus did that for us. Christ died for us in our place. He associated with us in our shame, but also as us as slaves to sin. Now the challenge is for us then, what does it mean for us? As John says in the beginning, he said, whoever does not love does not know God. So what does that work out as? How do we ourselves demonstrate sacrificial love? And I'm sure that you yourself can think of lots of different applications for that. I just brought two. Firstly, it's about considering others rather than ourselves, which is costly. Putting others first, rather than the Hollywood version of love, which is all about me and how I feel. It's about putting others first. But then it's also being willing to put up with shame and degradation. And I gave an example of that, of how we try to save face. We don't admit when we've done things wrong. Why don't we admit when we've done things wrong? Even as Christians, why do we cover up at times and aren't honest? It's because we're ashamed. It's because of shame. And it creates a false atmosphere where we all know our mistakes, but we think everyone else is perfect. And I brought about the importance of creating a culture where we can be honest about our mistakes. But again, as I say, I'm sure you can think of other ways that we can make sacrifices. But three questions to help you follow up the sermon. First is, what thoughts does the phrase God is love conjure up for you? Secondly, love is putting others first. Can you give some examples of how we can do this? And then finally, why do we often struggle to admit it when we do things that we regret? What are the benefits about being open about that? And who should we be open with? And does it matter? Have a great time discussing these things, and do come back next Sunday when I'll talk again about God is love. Blessings.